who was the toughest player or that you ever played against? The guy that you just dreaded playing against, could light you up, probably the best guy you ever stepped on the court against.
I think we lost him.
Did we lose him?
Yeah, his call was dropped. Maybe he'll call back in, but we'll keep going. Keep moving right along to keep our fans entertained. Looks like he might have had a drop call. I know he was calling in from a cell phone, so
we should get him
he is back. Hold on one second.
Excellent.
I'm here, guys.
There we go, Rick. Okay, but the
I'm here.
question
Yeah, I
just
went over someplace. I'm driving, and I lost the hit a dead spot there.
No problem. Question I'd asked you, who is the toughest player you played against? Best guy you ever played against? Guy you would be concerned could light you up? You had the toughest time with on the court?
Well, I had the most difficulty with a big guy who would post up a lot and trying to do that and use his size and strength, and that probably causes the most difficulty. Somebody out on the perimeter, not really an issue. Guys on the move coming at you, well, some of these great athletes, Dr. J, people like that. I mean, my God, if they're coming down the court in an open court situation on the move, you just hope that you didn't become a poster child somewhere for a picture of them jumping over you. But on a half-court situation, I never really. I thought I played, halfway decent defense. I study guys, I make them do things, and you get good team defense, you get help. So the big guys in like posting up would be the guys who would be the toughest on me. I mean, I'd have a tough time with those types of players.
All right, next question I have is this. Okay, now my father was a college basketball player back in the late 40s in Newark, Rutgers, and was an All-American. And he went to Week Wake High School. And he was a star in Newark at the same time that your head coach with the Golden State Warriors, Alvin Adels, was a high school star for Week Wake. Okay, talk to me a little bit about Alvin Adels and your relationship with him and the kind of coach he was. You guys won a title together in 74, 75. So that's a personal interest to me, a little bit about Alvin.
Yeah, well, Al was a tough competitor. He was known as the destroyer and a great defensive player. Not a great scorer, although he is known as a trivia question. He was the second leading scorer when Wilt scored 100 points in his game. But Al was a guy that was there for you as a coach. You knew you had it back. I mean, you figured if you got in a fight, you knew that Al would always be there to save you. It was kind of nice. And he was, he was a player's coach. I mean, he knew what it was like to be a player, and he was great and was understanding and he'd give you times off, things of that nature. So it was good. He's a great guy. Al comes and works. In fact, he'll be at my fantasy camp next month. Actually, at the end of October. In fact, if anybody's interested in learning more, then you go to ULFS, www.ulfs.com, and they can look up the Berry Fantasy Camp. It's pretty nice. We have a great time there, and Nate Thurman does it. Cliff Ray will be there, so it's kind of cool.
The next question I have for you, Rick, comes from one of my writers at the website. He wants to know, what is your proudest moment as a father in the NBA?
My proudest moment as a player in the NBA was obviously winning the championship. That's what it's all about. I mean, we were able to sweep the bullets and have the biggest upset in the history of finals from the NBA. I mean, that was pretty special, and just the way that we did it as a great team effort, that was the most meaningful thing that I feel that I was able to accomplish.
Rick, I have a particular interest in the fact that you were one of probably the last player to be real successful with underhanded free throws. Again, my father was a college basketball player. He was an underhanded free throw shooter in the late 40s. He was tutored by the great Bunny Levitt and how to shoot his free throws underhanded. Talk a little bit about that decision to be an underhanded free throw shooter, why you did it, and kind of the way.
I'm driving. I got to give my driver his directions to go.
Sure, no problem.
All right, I'm trying to figure things out here and do it. Anyway, we're going to get lost. I'm going to see my son playing a tennis match. I'm driving up to Boulder here in Colorado. So, anyway, my father was the one that got me to do it, and George Johnson was the last one to do it. My teammate, he went from 45% to 80% after he did it. So, it was really a situation where I didn't want to do it either because of, shooting that way, I'd get teased and all. My father said, "Look, if you're making them, they can't tease you." And so I worked out in the summer. I forget it was before my junior or senior year, and then I went up to 80% and over 80%, and I felt really good about it. And I kept getting better and better, and then I was able to improve on my dad's technique later in my career. When I made an adjustment, I was able to shoot over 92% in my last 6 years, and I took great pride in shooting free throws because it's the only time you can be selfish and still help your team and think about yourself. So. I remember though when I first did it in the first game, somebody was yelling out, "Hey Barry, you big sissy, shooting like that!" And the guy next to him, "What are you making fun of him for? He never misses."
Right.
So that was kind of cool.
And it's funny because Wilt Chamberlain refused to shoot like that for that same
No,
reason,
actually,
for the
Wilt
name
actually
calling.
shot that way. Wilt shot that way one time. He tried it, and I told him, I said, you know what, I respect the fact that you at least tried to get to be a better shooter. And unfortunately for him, he didn't have great technique. So.
Why do you think no one goes that direction now? You think it's a macho thing?
Oh, yeah, for sure, no question. Plus, there's nobody to teach it the way I did it.
Right, right. Because, I mean, Shaq struggled for years, and, I mean, as good a player as Shaq was, if he had been able to hit free throws, the man would have been unbelievable. And you would think maybe he would have gone in that direction at one point or another.
Well, I had Shaq ready to do it after the Olympics in Atlanta, but then the Lakers wouldn't hire me. He wasn't happy enough about wanting to do it, I guess, to hire me himself. And then he told me the next year that he was a hip-hop guy and it was going to ruin his image. And he made the change. Shaq would have been a go-to guy. He would have changed his career. He would have won more titles. It would have been a major difference in his career, without question in my mind. And he's a prime candidate for it because he had a wrist that was hurt when he was a kid, and he really couldn't shoot the ball properly fundamentally overhand, and so it would have been really perfect for him to do it. But his loss, he made the decision not to do it. But it's not dead yet. My son, who's a senior in high school, was shooting it that way, and I think he's going to be a really great free throw shooter as he progresses with it, because he really just started with it last year.
Oh, very interesting. Now, let's talk about the ABA for a minute. You, after a couple of years in the NBA, you left and went and signed an ABA contract. When you look back, your memories of that and that decision, do you find it to be a decision that you regret at all, or no?
No, I don't regret it. I mean, because I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have the friends that I have today. I wouldn't have the wife I have today, the son I have today, because I would never have met them. My whole life would have been different. So I never look back and think about that kind of stuff. The only thing that, if I regret anything, it's the fact that it probably had a major impact on my stature in the game. Had I stayed in the NBA and not sat out a year and played and continued to play at the level I played at, I would have been probably looked at as, even a better player than what people think I was. But I don't think that should be the case, but it is the case, unfortunately. I think it had an impact on the opinion that people have of me as a player. But I can live with that. It's no big deal. I have my championship ring, and I had an opportunity to do some really great things and met a lot of great people, and I really wouldn't trade it. It was an interesting life experience, to be sure.
Now, you're one of the most famous things about your career has been the ability to change yourself in terms of your style of play, especially after your knee injury. I want to talk about your knees back then and your knees today. Has modern medicine helped out tremendously in terms of you being able to walk? A lot of players in the olden days, they don't have the ability to stand on their 2 feet after the grind that they've been through in the 60s, 70s, and even early 80s.
Well, I've been blessed. I only had cartilage, but even then, back then, they had to cut it open. They didn't have arthroscopic surgery, and so that's caused an arthritic condition, and my knee is still functional. I can do pretty much what I want to do if I don't do too much. Do I have to deal with some discomfort? Yeah, but nothing like some of these other guys have. So I'm really very fortunate in that regard, and the players today have so much more at their disposal as far as preventing that type of thing. I never did any proper weightlifting and all for that. Had I done stuff and strengthened my leg the way it needed to be straightened, the injury that I initially had probably would have never occurred, because I would have had the muscle strength on the lateral part of my leg and outside the knee to prevent that from happening. So, but I don't look back and say, hey, I could have been so much better if I didn't have a knee that was only about 70% effective. I probably would have been. But, hey, I was still able to do pretty darn well the way it was, and I'm still fortunate enough, as I say, to pretty much do a lot of the things that I want to do. Would I like to have a knee that didn't, hurt a lot at times? Yeah, sure. But I could be a lot worse off, that's for sure.